right, let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome, and thanks so much for joining. This is our very first run and practice session, and we're really excited to kick this off with a deep dive into capacity planning. For those of you new to us, Run is a real-time resource management platform designed to help businesses manage their people and project schedules and long-term forecasts all in one place. And just to set expectations right up front, this isn't a webinar and it isn't a canned demo. This is a live interactive walkthrough where we skip the slides and jump straight into the platform. Today, we're looking into how teams spot capacity gaps before they become delivery risk. We'll look at supply versus demand, model pipeline work, and make resourcing decisions based on what the future actually looks like. With me today are two specialists who spend their days helping teams solve this exact puzzles. Matt Webb, our senior solution consultant. Matt is all about practical people-first planning and helping teams make better decisions with real data. And then we have Jenna Ball, our solution consultant. Jenna works closely with customers on every day to bring clarity and confidence to their forecasting and planning. We'll keep this conversational, so please jump in with questions as we go. Matt, Jenna, let's dive in.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd, and welcome everyone. Jenna and I are super happy to have this opportunity to be kicking off our new run-in practice sessions. And honestly, I couldn't think of a better topic to start with. I think capacity planning is probably on the minds of a lot of people at this time of the year, and for many, it's probably a full-time gig too. And actually, you might have seen this in our respective social channels, but in the last month, we had kicked off our 2026 resource management survey. And one of the things that I've found to be quite interesting and quite telling so far is that in the early results, we're seeing that I think it was 82% of people have said that their capacity planning capabilities are only somewhat effective, with as little as 7% saying extremely effective. Now, that's a pretty big gap. Now, granted, there's of course still some time to go before we close out those results, but I think it's pretty telling. I think it's a pretty strong indicator that this continues to be an area that a lot of companies need and want to see improvement in. And we only have the 30 minutes today. I think we would need a lot more than 30 minutes to cover all the ins and outs of capacity planning. But what we do hope to accomplish today is to at least provide insights into how we are seeing our clients leverage Run. I think Jenna and myself we're in a fortunate position where we're discussing this topic probably several times a day with a lot of resource management leaders, and we want to share some of those discussions and more importantly, where those same organizations are finding solutions in Run. And I've personally always found capacity planning to be the strategic backbone of resource management. And I think you can argue that it represents much of the value too that a dedicated resource management team, an RMO, is bringing to their organization, particularly senior leadership. So we'll be covering as much as we can in this session, as Todd mentioned, talking about how you can use Run to leverage, or how you can leverage Run to forecast capacity beyond just a month, beyond just 2 months, and share what some of those outcomes have been. And we do encourage engagement. So if you have questions, drop them into the Q&A, and we'll cover as much as we can while we're running live, and we can always provide some responses afterwards too. So let's jump into it, and let me go over into the platform itself. So if you are just seeing Run for the first time, some of this might seem a bit overwhelming, especially if you're used to working day in, day out in spreadsheets. But we'll explain all this in a bit more detail. So what you're seeing on your screen right now is one of two core dashboards that are frequently used by our clients for resource and capacity planning. And at the end of the day, the problem that we're trying to solve here is the lack of clarity, the lack of visibility into the future, to be able to just confidently answer the question of, do we have enough supply to deliver on both current and future workload and future demand? And that really is the intent here with the people planner, is to give you that centralized visibility, give you that single source of truth that we're all after, both in a short term, so being able to drill down to a weekly view, or even looking long term, right? So being able to look as far out as a year. And I think that's one of the common challenges that I hear from leaders, is only being able to see 2 months out, only being able to see 3 months out. And for capacity planning purposes, that's not exactly ideal. And I think in that same vein, when we're talking about capacity planning, we're often looking at this through more of a macro lens. And while it's certainly valuable to be able to understand, each resource's utilization and know where there are bottlenecks, that planning, especially at a leadership level, it's often done at a higher level. And so what that looks like for leaders that are in Runn and wanting to understand that capacity is looking at capacity from more of a group standpoint. And what I mean by that is, what we can do is start to understand that capacity by role. It could be by team. It could be by employment type. So if you're looking to understand, what is my capacity for my FTEs versus my contractors and my freelancers. And again, the idea here, the purpose here, is to get that visibility, to understand, like, where can we take on more work. And the other thing too I'll mention is that you're not limited to these fields. So it's very common that our clients will set up Runn in a way that maps to their way of working. And what I mean by that is, if you need to understand capacity by department, by region, we work with a lot of internal organizations that are resourcing based on their portfolio. So this is all tailored when you're going through and actually setting everything up. But let's use the example of, let's use skills, because I think skills is an interesting one. If you're thinking about using skills today, or if you are already using skills for planning, and we're talking about capacity planning, I think this information becomes extremely valuable. And I say that because what our clients are doing is they're leveraging this data for deeper insight into which skills just have the highest demand, right? So we can see our resources that are skilled in API design, but consequently understanding, okay, which skills do I need to go out and hire for? And when you have access to this data, and it's also updated in real time, it's informing HR, it's informing recruitment teams where they need to hire, and it's letting them get out in front of this too, to be able to hire for, what can often be very specialized skills, very, very competitive skills. And this is data that a lot of them just didn't have access to yesterday. So it becomes quite helpful. And you have this working in a very instrumental manner. Another common example too is being able to understand utilization and capacity at a role level. And you'll see within this graph view, it gives you that high level understanding into where you might have some of your resources, like in this case, our engineers that are totally maxed out. But one of the views that was introduced into Runn quite recently, actually just as recent as last week, is being able to look at this and say, okay, we know our engineers are in the red, but I need to understand by how many hours, right? How many FTE? And so what you can do is toggle this over to a couple different views now. So I can actually pull this up in FTE, and it's helping better inform where that gap is and how wide that gap is as well. And again, it all comes back to clarity, and it comes back to visibility, and having this information to not always make decisions on the spot, but to at least drive that discussion.
Hey, Matt. I
Oh, yeah.
didn't want to interrupt your flow, but we had a question come in just asking, does Runn integrate with CRMs or other tools? So I wonder if you could take a moment to speak to that while you're in this page here.
That's a terrific question. I think when we're talking about capacity planning, it's about looking into the future and just knowing like if we take on this might happen. If we take on this, we have the capacity, don't have the capacity. So to answer the question, it's very common that our clients will actually integrate Runn with their CRM. So whether that be, or even with their intake system. So if they're integrating that with, HubSpot, they're integrating that with ServiceNow. But the idea behind that is once those projects, once those opportunities reach a certain point of probability, they're automatically being pulled into Runn as a tentative project. And you can think of those tentative projects almost like your soft projects, right? And I know for a lot of organizations I work with, they'll do this on an annual basis, they'll do this on a quarterly basis. And so what that looks like in Runn is you have this toggle up here. So when I toggle on my tentative projects, I can instantly see the impact that has on a role by role level. And further to that, when you drop this down, where we see a stronger use is for what if planning. So it's very common that our clients will leverage Runn for creating different scenarios to say, like, if I turn this off and I turn them all off and say, okay, well, what happens if I, take on this continuous process project on now versus maybe delaying that by 3 months? And those are a lot of the common practices. And again, it comes back to being able to understand that impact as early as possible and know, okay, what risk does that pose on other projects? And actually, just tailing off of that point, one of the views in Runn that I would say is more commonly used by senior leadership is charting. So let me just pull this up here. Now, what charting is giving you is a view across the entire landscape. And you can think of this as like your supply versus demand. And what I'd say is probably more common is that they're looking beyond a quarter, right? So they might look, let's say, 6 months out. And what these colors represent here is that pink shaded color that you see there, that represents your effective capacity. So what's really nice about the way this all works is that Runn takes into account any PTO. There's a built-in public holiday function within Runn, and that is just helping improve the accuracy of your planning. Because I'm not going to put Jenna on a project in, the middle of May if I know she's going to be in Mexico. Very envious. Jenna's going to be doing that, but I need to have that data to help inform those decisions. And if I turn on tentative, we can see like we're in no position right now to take on any additional work unless we're going to go out and hire what looks to be probably another 50 FTE, another 100 FTE once we get into May. And anytime that I'm sharing this with clients, it brings me back to something a customer had said to me a couple of years ago, and it was in a rather sort of blunt manner where they had said, like, show me where I need to hire or fire. And at first I was a bit taken aback by that, but then I realized like this is very vital information that is driving a lot of critical decisions for a company. And this is data that a lot of them just don't have access to. And for this particular client, this is exactly what they had been missing. And I'll just finish it off and pass it over to Jenna here in a moment. But I think capacity planning is so critical right now, and probably more important than ever because of just the changes that we're seeing. Right, there's a lot of change happening with organizations sort of flattening their org structures and bringing upon a lot of change, and hiring decisions are being challenged more than ever. And you've got to be able to back that up with tangible data. You've got to be able to say, hey, I've got this engineering team of 15 people and they are at 130%, or they're over their weekly hours by 20 hours, right? No one wants that scenario, but you've got to have that data. And the challenge for so many today is that data just lives across so many different spreadsheets, different systems, but that is exactly what Runn is for. And you're seeing this, right? How our clients are leveraging Runn to gain better clarity and to come to the table with more conviction when they're having those conversations with their leaders. So I'll pause here. If anyone has any questions, let us know. But I'll pass it over to Jenna. Jenna's just going to talk a bit more about where all this workload and where all this demand data actually comes from.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Matt. I wanted just to pause for a minute, see if there's any questions coming in. All right, we'll switch things over a little bit. So, hello everyone. Excited to dig in more to kind of one of the other, we'll say, dashboard that is frequently used within Runn. So, while Matt went through a little bit about our people planner, want to dig into a little bit of the project planner and how this really helps us support capacity planning, especially when it comes to indicating demand to ensure you have that supply amongst your resources that you're currently managing. So, just to give a brief introduction of the project planner. This essentially houses all of your projects. You can think of this as a project portfolio, whereby I have all my projects here and kind of the calendar or Gantt style view of the project duration, over here on the right. So I've essentially right now I've turned on, I have all my confirmed projects. I've also turned on, the plethora of tentative projects we have going here. And similar, there's a variety of different ways you can kind of slice and dice information. So it's really focused from a view perspective. But what I want to do is really just like narrow in on, one specific project here. So I'm just going to just get our focus here onto one project just to talk a little bit more about it. So from a project standpoint, just to touch on a little bit of functionality before we get more into the capacity planning side, but lots of information.
Jenna,
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
to mess with your flow there too. But there's a really good question that just came in that I think is quite relevant. So the question is, how do you identify when a resource on a project is over capacity?
Okay, good question. Yeah, so I'll definitely touch on that. Actually, on this view here, that would work well. So, yeah, from a project standpoint, lots of different information you can add in and ways to structure your projects here. To that question, one thing to call out is, of course, we want to get into the practice of being proactive and ensuring that the people that we're assigning to projects have capacity to take that on. But, of course, there's times where people are over allocated. And similar to the heat map you saw in the people planner, on the project side of things, I can see that in, the same way here. So, for example, this procurement manager here, this red line indicates, a timeline as to when this person is over capacity. So very clear to be able to see that as I'm working through my project planning. And then also I could click in, on this specific view, open up the split screen, see, which projects are really causing that person to be over allocated. So you can work through that bottleneck, whether it is, simply transferring it to somebody else, perhaps editing the work assignments or spending or scheduling less time to work on that, and then using kind of project prioritization to work through some of those as well. So that's definitely something that's common that comes up. So it is good to have a specific workflow to help work through those challenges as well. So on the project side of things, and we kind of focus in on capacity planning and making sure you're taking capacity into consideration when plotting your people and deciding who's the best resource for a specific project. Of course, I have some scheduled work assignments of what I anticipate to be kind of the time allocated towards this project here. I'll also draw your attention to this placeholder here. So within Runn, there are placeholder functionality, which if you've used any other tool before, this really is key in helping to indicate your demand for a specific role in this case. Whether it is when you're in the early stages of planning your projects before they start or come to fruition, or if it is, as a project is progressing and, things change, client demand changes, scope changes, and so on, and you have this resourcing gap. So placeholders are so key and are unlimited in Runn. So a lot of our customers really find value in being able to use this in many different ways. So to highlight this here, I have a back-end software developer here. And another key part of it is, of course, when we're, allocating people and making sure capacity is considered, we look at the role, we look at the availability, but within Runn there's so much more to really consider. So you can add in different requirements. So perhaps for making sure this project is finished on budget and on time, there's certain skill sets we need to consider to make sure we have the right person for this project, or other attributes that need to be considered. even such as bespoke custom fields that you might add in that are pertinent to your business, such as a regional consideration as well. Once I've
And
added in,
Jenna,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I just had a question sent to me, and it's more around, I guess, the topic of reporting, which I think you're going to go into. But the question was leaning more into like how does management view this information? Like, is there a management like dashboard within the platform where they can see all this data?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a couple of different ways that our customers use Runn to really support those conversations when you're trying to decide different types of scenarios or hiring demand or anything like that. So that's something that I will definitely get to just after this portion here. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so when it comes to this placeholder here, of course we've added in some requirements and some workload. Run supports the ability to easily find people that fit that requirement. So when I've pulled up this find person button, it is opening the split screen. It's automatically filtering by any requirements I've added in, and then sharing with me, individuals and resources in my organization that might be a good fit here. It's sorting it by the most amount of availability to least. So I can easily see, as a delivery lead or resourcing manager or whoever it might be that's doing these kind of workflows, is to hover over each individual to understand and preview the impact that taking on this work would have on their capacity. Now we see in this specific circumstance, everyone is maxed out. This is really key because this is helping to identify resourcing gaps to be able to fulfill the needs of this project. And this also shows me that, we have enough workload in this scenario to hire another developer here. So what I can do in this circumstance is also to use kind of a native part of Runn as well is our propose to hire function. Within this, I can, perhaps tag a hiring manager or, tag somebody else, need to hire ASAP because this project's coming up in a couple of weeks. If there's any different attributes or requirements I want to make sure are considered, with this request, I can go ahead and confirm that request and have that workflow built in. Now, of course, there's another side, through email notifications and whatnot that is considered. But the kind of point I'm making here is that Runn is a tool that really allows you to be mindful of the people that you are allocating towards projects, taking capacity into consideration so that you can really be proactive when you are making your project plans and understanding from a resourcing decision who's going to be the best fit for your role here. So, and then just to share, a quick story of a customer. So, one customer just actually last week just recently started using Runn. They've only been using Runn for about a month. One of their team leads said, "Hey, I need a full stack developer for this project starting in a month. I need to hire somebody." He said, "You know what? Pause for a second. Let me take a look at Runn and see what we can pull up." Very easily, within a few minutes, was able to see there was one full stack developer that went from being 100% capacity this month to 25% utilization the following month. So very easily was able to add that person to the project. And this made, of course, the team lead extremely happy that they didn't have to hire or look at potentially at a contractor, was able to fulfill the needs and the kind of placeholder for their particular project. And then, of course, the individual employee was able to, get up to 100% utilization again as well. So he said in that moment, like, Jenna, Runn has already truly paid for itself. So to get back to your question, Matt, that came in about, how do we communicate this, these hiring indicators and demand and all of this to leadership. So a couple of ways we see our customers leveraging Runn for that. Number one is using Runn as a tool to really help to paint that picture, bringing the platform into the conversation. If it's, pulling up the charts to show the demand, if it, showcasing the availability kind of here on the flip side, having Runn as part of the conversation and using it as, a very clear way to pull different levers and toggles to work through different conversations. The other part is also being able to use, Runn's kind of amazing different kind of data suites here through our report suite, which of course we have about 20 different presets. You can, kind of configure and toggle so many different things. So it could be a custom report for you to use. As you might imagine, these are more raw or granular in nature, but are all populated in real time. But what we see most commonly brought in for those leadership type conversations is our insights dashboard. And even using these visuals, which, are, as you can see, like presentation ready visuals to help to support and guide those conversations as well. So this one here, just easily showing projected total capacity and workload. I can see over time, how is our team faring? I can, toggle on the tentative, highlight capacity deficits and really showcase that, in a conversation as well. And similar to, the project and people planner, turning on different types of projects and whatnot, but really kind of highlighting it in that capacity as well.
Hey, Jenna, there's a good question here around like showing or talking about the resource forecast heat map and whether or not it aggregates demand from close one opportunities and pipeline opportunities, or does it only show confirm work? Maybe you can just go back to the people planner and then just show the charts piece of it.
Yeah.
So what this data represents is the blue bars is your confirmed workload. And then Jenna, if you toggle on tentative, the tentative represents your tentative workload. But what is often very common is that, Jenna, if you click on filter people within the charts, and if you go down, you might be able to go down to project custom fields. What you're able to do, you'll just have to pull the chart up further. Yeah. What you're able to do is map your opportunity stages from HubSpot, from Salesforce, or any system for that matter. And that allows you to actually drill in on just those opportunities that are at 70% or 80%, and then forecast capacity based on that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. And for kind of using the similar lingo, like close one purposes, you could think of as this is your confirmed workload. So these are the ones that are happening. And then, the pipeline opportunities can kind of be viewed as your tentative. But as Matt mentioned, there's also ways using custom fields to add to that further. So it's a great question there. Okay, great. All right. So to summarize at this point, it's no wonder capacity planning is top of mind. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir with those that have joined, because you've joined for a reason to learn more about it. So all in all, when you're working about capacity planning, you can sometimes uncover risks you weren't aware of, through kind of all the different things that we've gone through today. So of course, we are just scratching the surface with respect to capacity planning and Runn. There's so much more. And as Matt said at the beginning, we could spend probably hours on this topic alone. So I'll wrap up the demo portion there, and I will hand things back over to Todd for final wrap up and any additional questions.
All right, great job, team. Well, that brings us to the end of our first walkthrough, and I just want to say thanks for being a part of it. And before we let you go, I just have three quick things to cover. First, huge thanks to the questions, and we still have a few in the queue, I noticed. So Matt and Jenna are going to stay on for an extra 5 to 10 minutes after the presentation. So if you have any last minute how-to questions, drop them in the Q&A now, and if we can, maybe we even take you off mute if you need to clarify further. If for some reason we don't get to yours, we'll follow up via email or look into hosting a second session. For those of you ready to solve the capacity puzzle yourself, you can scan the QR code on the screen and start a free trial and explore Runn for yourself. If you're not ready for a trial, you're more than welcome to reach out to Matt or Jenna and to bring up some specific what if scenarios, and just send an email to sales@runn.io, and we'll set up a deep dive. And then also, finally, if you want to enjoy if you enjoyed our best practices today, keep an eye out for LEAP. It's our monthly thought leadership community where we tackle the bigger questions around resource management, and it's completely around thought leadership. And our next session is February 10th, and you can sign up using the same QR code on the screen. Thanks again for joining for our very first Runn session.